shoot, bang, bang, shoot, shoot.
Give me those!
Cartoon!
Hey, a quick update for the marathon. I originally said that an episode was going to be anywhere from 5 minutes long to 25 minutes long. But I am changing that now to a max of 35 minutes because I have a lot of things to say. And 25 minutes might not be enough for some shows that need to be talked about more. 35 I think is a better max. It's so that I can get everything that I want to say about a certain show in one video and don't have to make multiple videos on said show. Not saying that some shows won't get multiple videos, some will, but most will just get one video. Luckily, Time Squad is one of the shorter ones. Mostly because I like it, but I don't have a lot to say on this one. You know how every cartoon ever more or less has at least one time travel episode? Dexter's Laboratory had one, SpongeBob had one, Jimmy Neutron had one, My Little Pony had one, The Problem Solvers had one, I could go on. But I don't think that I have ever seen a whole show do time travel. That is animated, that is, like something that's not Doctor Who. Oh wait, Fonz and the Happy Days Gang did a whole show on time travel, but I don't think people like that show. Doing a whole show on time travel can be a bit risky if you don't do your time travel right. And yet, this is probably one of the best uses of time travel that I have ever seen. And it takes place in 100 million AD. I don't think Time Squad is amazing by any means. It's no top 10 best Cartoon Network shows of all time, but it did keep me interested in each and every episode. Oh, Larry 3000, can you please explain how the time travel in this show works?
Recently it was discovered that as time grew older, it began to decay, or unravel as it were.
Thank you very much. One thing that makes this show unique is its time slots. I don't mean what time of the day that it aired, I'll talk about the length of each episode. You see, back then networks had to appeal to standards for time, and yeah, they still do to this day. You basically had a half-hour block into a 1 22-minute story or 2 11-minute stories, with of course 8 minutes of commercials between each. Time Squad actually was different for that each episode had its own time lengths. They still followed the 22-minute program with 8 minutes of commercials, yes, but they could have episodes that were 15 minutes long, 11 minutes long, 22 minutes long, 7 minutes long, even 3 minutes long. It was very unique for the time. And even today, cartoons don't really experiment with their time lengths. Most shows usually have 2 11-minute episodes or 1 22-minute episodes. They don't usually branch out from that. Unless you're Netflix. Sure, most 22-minute shows can have 44-minute episodes as specials, and most 11-minute shows have 22/44-minute episodes as specials, but that's just that. Specials. Nothing normal. And for the most part, Time Squad does take advantage of that. At no point do I think that the short episodes ever rush their stories, or that the longer episodes ever use filler. One thing that interests me in this show is how the show handles villains. You see, everyone in this show is based off of real people. While it's obviously not the actual people in history, they get voices. For example, Tom Kennedy voices Eli Whitney and Abraham Lincoln.
The cotton gin. Cotton gin.
It's supposed to be mostly like them, but then has some random changes like the mob guy Al Capone loving clowns, even though that Al Capone didn't really love clowns in real life. That's because the time travel stuff, there are mistakes in the past, and Time Squad has to fix the mistakes. How else are they gonna have a future with no war, no pollution, and bacon good for your heart?
I come from the future where there's no more war, no pollution, and bacon is good for your heart. Oh yeah, no, we figured out time travel. Nothing to it.
But no, the real thing that I wanted to talk about was how the show handles villains. As in, we have to view them in the right. Now, in any other show ever, this is a bad thing. Like Tangle trying to reform someone like Cassandra despite her being a parasite that offers nothing nice and abuses Rapunzel. Here in this show though, if they don't help the bad guy out, they don't get their perfect future. For example, one episode is about Napoleon taking over Europe. But he can't actually do it because his wife forced him to stay at home to do all the work and take care of the children. But he needs to take over Europe so that one day there will be no war and bacon will be good for your heart. So Otto, Buck, and Larry all have to actually help out. And it's funny because they help him take over all of Europe, which is something you wouldn't expect heroes to do, but it works. Also, I just love it how Otto is so loving taking over Europe. It's funny how a little kid is perfectly fine with that.
Wow! I never knew war could be so much fun!
Where'd you learn to handle a musket like that?
I guess I just found my calling.
Oh, by the way, did you know that Time Squad is the first true Cartoon Network cartoon that has nothing to do with Hanna-Barbera? It was the very first series produced entirely by Cartoon Network Studios since William Hanna died in 2001, the same year as this show. It no longer was part of the division of Hanna-Barbera. How sad. Cartoon Network's first show, entirely without Hanna-Barbera's help, I think they did a very good job with it. Now, before we end off anything, let's talk about our three main characters, shall we? Starting with the orphan, Otto. Oh, by the way, I just love the evil nun at the beginning of the show. She kind of reminds me of the teacher from Invader Zim.
You stink! Go to the bathroom and roll around in the toilet until you smell better.
But I'll smell like the toilet.
Exactly. You're being transferred to the underground classroom. And I'm just tired of you.
Both are really cruel but fun to watch. Speaking of Invader Zim, I find it interesting how this came out the exact same year as Invader Zim. Because of how the orphanage that Otto lives at looks exactly like Zim's place. Look at this! And hey, at the very least, there's a very good reason for Otto to leave. In some ways, it's done better than its modern contemporaries. For example, we don't have Luz who just abandons her own mother, and the show has never been clear if we should care about the mother or not. Hello, the Owl House! But I think it's fine for Otto to completely abandon the orphanage since no one cares for him and he never liked it in the first place. It feels perfect. I don't know why we had to have this appear again in the final episode, but whatever, we'll talk about the finale later. As for Buck, now I don't really like the idiot guy that's in charge, but I think Rob Paulsen makes it work because the voice acting for him is amazing. Buck I do enjoy. He does seem like an older best friend and maybe even a father figure to Otto.
Lois and Clark!
Great Caesar's ghost! We're gonna make Superman!
What's this?
Hey! My magnets!
Well, animated dad-father figure. The one that's a dumbass dad. But I do think he's a fun character. My favorite thing about him is when he bonds with Otto. Whether it be their adventures going together, the "it's go time" thing, or whenever they team up together to prank Larry, or when Buck has an all-out food war with Otto. In one episode, Buck tries to hurt Otto with the couch, but it works because Buck never succeeds and Otto gets plenty of pranks on him, so I can let it slide for how Buck was because Buck got what he deserved. And then there's Larry the Robot. He's definitely my favorite character of the whole show, and he's the straight man of the group and moves the plot forward. However, the thing that's most memorable about him is the voice. That's Mark Hamill doing the voice. But honestly, I had to look it up. At first I thought it was the voice of C-3PO, but no, it's really Luke Skywalker. Jeez, like seriously, if you can't get Anthony Daniels for some reason for voice acting C-3PO, get Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill actually has a very good vocal range when it comes to his voice acting. He does voices that I was surprised to find.
Sticky Beard! The stickiest pirate ever to sail the summer!
Oh, what a night!
Well, I bowl on Tuesdays.
Yes, he's Sticky Beard, but that's a later entry on this list. As for Larry 3000 himself, like I said, he's your typical straight man character, but just so happens to be a robot. And it's not a dumb decision. It usually has some effect with the plot. The first episode was about flesh-eating robots, and people in those times apparently hate robots because Eli Whitney invented robots that intentionally eat other people. My favorite episode of the whole show, oddly enough, doesn't even have any time travel. In fact, it's the only episode of the whole show where there is no time travel at all. It's the episode where Larry is tired of Buck and Otto's shenanigans, so he forces them to clean up. But they say no, so Larry decides to just clone himself, and then the clone makes another clone, and then the clone makes another clone to not do the work, and so on and so forth. It's just so funny to see all these Mark Hamills or Larrys growing around just being so funny and amazing. That episode is called Day of the Larrys, by the way. Oh, by the way, they usually get their time travel facts right. I don't think they get anything wrong per se, even though they are trying to change it intentionally. And before we end this one, let's talk about that series finale. Oh boy, this is bad. Not the worst series finale from Cartoon Network, but it still has its problems. Basically, because Buck gets mad at Otto because Otto beat him in the video game, they had a feud and go back to the present, i.e. 2002/2003, and talk George Bush out of building the world's largest ball of twine because George is stupid. Look, I hate the joke of making the president a dumbass, and it's still bad here. The nun finds Otto in DC by sheer coincidence, and then Otto goes back to his hard labor. But then, after a bunch of new kids that Buck gets, they eventually go back to Otto. The kids are meh, except for Dexter.
I am not an orphan!
That actually was really funny, I love that joke. But the rest of the episode is not that good. So, final thoughts on Time Squad? I do recommend this series. I don't think that I'm ever going to watch this show again, which is kinda sad. I know it's weird for me to recommend a show, especially since I'm not going to bother watching it again. But that's because I think it's funny and does the job well. it doesn't have much rewatchability. I mean, if I was with someone and they were watching it, I wouldn't mind watching it with them. I would recommend watching the show and maybe watching 5 to 10 episodes, or maybe even a dozen episodes if you really want to check it out. Any episode is good. You can watch these episodes out of order since there's not that much continuity. Just jump out before you get to the series finale, and then you're gonna have a good time. I have no idea why this show is not talked about that much. It's a good show. I really do recommend it. But I think the reason why the show is not talked about that much is because the next show overshadowed this show. And the next show coming up is also fun.
Coming up next, it's
Extra